Okay, so this stretch exercise it just says watch the video and follow along, and so it seems to me that's what you're doing right now. So let's go on and head here into my work and see what's happening. Now, you're not given anything, right? Anything at all to go on. So let's just do this. Let's just create a base program that does everything we always need it to do, right? Return 0. All right, so nothing actually comes out, but this should compile. And you can see right here what the output is supposed to look like minus the greater than signs. So let's just grab a copy of that, and we'll save it off over here on the side for later in case I need it. Okay, so the first thing it says is save $1,000 at 12% interest. And by the way, if you can get 12% interest somewhere, please let me know. But it makes all the calculations obvious and easy, so we'll go ahead with that. Alright, so let's just do this, and let's see, I'm going to move this over here so we have a little bit more space for the code. And then that makes this line up, which, or it doesn't, there we go, now we have it lined up. Okay, so so it says save $1,000 at 12% interest, 1% per month, NDEL. So let's just run that. And we should see the first line go away as far as what's wrong with it. Unless I've... Yep, okay, that was really fast. Okay, so the next thing is how much do you want to save each month? So that's pretty, again, that's pretty straightforward. So let's just do that. There we go. And run it again. So this is how you could figure out what any of these programs are supposed to be doing based on just following along with each output line. Okay, well this is supposed to be 100, and it's kind of obvious from this that you're asking a question. So my guess would be that this would be followed with a cin, and for lack of anything better, we'll just call it X. And so let's just make this a double. So a double is a value that can store significant digits to the right of the decimal point. And if you look down here, you'll see those are showing up down here. So again, you could determine that just by looking at what you're expected to do. So that will bring it in, and then now let's display it. And maybe that'll get rid of the next line for us. Okay, so that got rid of that line, and now we're on to month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, etc. Now, please do not fall under the illusion that the next thing to do would be print, the cout month 1, and whatever it exactly says here. That would pass this one, but it won't pass the next one. And so you need to look to see what's going on here. This looks like a progression, right? And so we can see that, and we can see here at the bottom it took 10 months, and you now have $1,056.68. And you remember this started with saving $1,000. So it seems to me that probably we have something called total, and it's initially equal to 0. And we do something like this. While total is not equal to 0, we're going to do something. Well, exactly what that is what the issue is. So let's just do something easy. Let's just say total plus equals 100, right? oh, and it's not total not equal to 0. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why I said that, but it's, total is less than 1,000, right? Because you're trying to get your total to be $1,000 or more. As you can tell, more because it's 1056.68 down here. So while total is less than 1,000, we're just going to add 100 to it. Now, that obviously is not going to work, but you know, it's a start. So let's see here. All right, so it executed, but you couldn't really tell much. So let's do this. Let's create something called, how about month? Month equals 1. So let's do this. Cout month, and then month in here. And then let's do, let's see, month, and then let's do, and I'm just looking down at the output, and it looks like something like this. Okay, let's just go with that. Put an endl here. Now let's put an endl on the next line, because probably there's other things we're going to have to do. So let's start with that. Oh, but look at, well, here, let's run it and we'll see what's going to happen here. Okay, so here's what, and if you want to at any point, you can click over here and look at the actual output from your program, right? You got month 1, $1 or $0 deposited, month 1, month 1, month 1. Oh, wait a minute, what's going on there? Well, we're never adding 1 to month. So let's do that like that and run it again and see if it's a little bit better. All right, let's look at the output. So now we have month 1 through 10. Now that just coincidentally did that. I added 100 onto this, right? Because that's what this value is that we entered right here, right? Well, you can't just leave that way forever. So, but it's easy enough. This is really just x, right? X is the amount. X is not a very good variable, but that's how much. Here, let's call it dep for deposit, right? So here we go. Dep as in deposit, not Johnny. And let's see if I've changed all of them properly. All right, let's look at the output. So we're getting there, right? It's supposed to say $0 deposited, or $0 deposited, and then, oh, these are all 100s, and then interest earned is. So let's just get on this line, we'll just go on the next line. It'll be easier than letting it wrap around. So we got that deposited. Let's put a space there. And then here we're going to say we deposited dep. And then space interest earned is. And then we'll, how about we create something called interest, which doesn't have a value yet, but let's give, oh, you know what, this month here, this should be an integer, so let's do that. All right, this is a double, and so is interest. It's initially 0. So let's just use that and see where we can go with that. All right, let's look at the output. All right, 0 deposited, 100, or is month 1 you have $0, you deposited 100, and the interest earned is 0. Okay, so everything else about that is right except for this interest. Well, it tells us here it's 1% per month, and that's on, you know, in case you're not aware of how interest works, we're just going to assume here that it's calculated monthly. So the interest is going to be whatever the total is times 0.01. right, or 1%. So, so let's see here. Interest is there. Okay, let's give it a whirl and see what happens. Okay, so we got month. So let's see, month 1, $0 deposited, 100. Interest earned is, and in this case it's 0, and it should be 1. But notice this is 1 and 2 and 3, etc. down here. But also, it is not catching those decimal values. So let's go back over here. Well, why is it 0 to begin with? Well, that's because evidently we're calculating the interest, but we should be doing it after we add the deposit. So let's look at this. If we move it up here, that means now that the interest will be calculated on the with the deposit included. I think we're going to find there's a little bit of a problem with that. Let's see here. Let's go back over here and see what it's supposed to look like, or what it does look like. $100. So here we have $100, but here it says $0. So now we have a little bit of a problem, because we have all this on one line, but in fact the initial value is supposed to be printed or displayed on the screen, but we also want to calculate the interest before the rest of the line is created. Well, that's not really that big a problem. Let's just look at this. Here's the total. And so if we just move this statement up here, now the total will initially be 0. And then we can calculate the interest, and right there it is after we've calculated it. So let's take a look at what that gives us. Oh, that's starting to look much better. Let's look at the output. So the first one is $1, but then we still have 2 and 3 and 4. Now why do we have that and we don't have any decimal places? So let's go take a look at that. Alright, so interest here is a double, and total here is a double. We see that these values here are including the interest. And I think if we look back over here, right, see, we're adding the 100 each time, but we are not adding the interest in. So let's go back over here, and let's add the interest into the balance, or total as we're calling it here. Total is equal to the total plus the interest. Okay, so the total first is the total plus the deposit, then we calculate the interest, display it, and then we add the interest back into the total. So let's see what happens when we do that. Okay, now we're down to only, it took 10 months and you have 1056.68. Let's look at the output. So here we go, right? So without, right, so, and by the way, we're just displaying the default size of the floating point numbers, the doubles. And we will learn in a different part of the course how to force the particular size of that. So as you see here, these values here are going past a cent's value, right? And again, to 1/10 of a cent over here. But anyway, so it looks like what we need is it took 10 months and now you have such and so. So let me just save myself some typing here, and we'll put that here. See out, it took a certain amount, but alright, so month, right? When we come out of here, when we come out of the loop, month will be however many it was to begin with, right? However many months it's taken, and you have the total. So let's break this up here so that it's a little easier to see. So it took such and so months, right? Month number months, and you now have a $sign total value. So let's try that. All right, so we're 1 off here. So that's interesting. So let's look at the output again. All right, so we have 11 months, but you can see it only took 10 months. So the question is, well, what's going on there, right? So sometimes a student would be, you'd think, just put -1 here and be done with it. And that would probably work in this case. Let's just see. Yep, it all of a sudden passed all the cases. But you ought to at least understand why you're doing this, right? Because that's because we started with 1 and we're incrementing here, whereas if we started, for example, let's just try it with 0 and take that -1 out of there, and let's just see if this doesn't fix this up for us a little bit. Now I think maybe it'll make something else broken. So let's see. Right, see how it says month 0 here, right? Month, and the original value wants to start with month 1. Now, of course, you could also put +1 right here, right? But let's look at this. Month is not used anywhere inside of any of these calculations. So if we simply move this up here, we should get something that gives us what we want. Yep, now they've all passed. And let's take a look at the output. Right, and it's month 1 through 10, and it's 10 months, and you have 10, 56, 68. Let's see if we can get the other values to display here. Let's see, it doesn't seem to be refreshing. All right, I just refreshed the screen by hitting the little refresh button up here in the browser. So if we look at some of the other situations here, all of a sudden, let's rerun this to make sure that I'm correct, that nothing has changed. All right, they've all passed. And so this is just different values. In this case, you're only saving $5 a month. And it takes you 110 months to get $1,000. Right, and so there's several different versions here, but you can see how it would not work out for you if you were to, let me just make that a little bit wider, if you were to try to hard code all of these in there, right? You really need to think about what the problem is saying, what it's trying to have you do, and then it's taking the steps, a step by step, to solve the problem that's given. And that is the essence of programming. It's the solving problems given the syntax of the language, and that's really that's a very important aspect of programming. Programming is a process. It's not a bunch of things to memorize. So please keep that in mind.